I would like to invite our keynote speaker, Professor Mike Grandinetti, Executive Fellow at Harvard Business School, serial tech entrepreneur and award-winning professor, recognized globally for expertise in AI, innovation strategy, and digital transformation. Sir, we would like to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you. So hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay in the back? A little loud, right? All right. So before I begin with my formal slides, I want to address a couple of the questions that were. It's on. Yeah, it's on. You got the green light. Green light's on. There you go. Wow. All right. So let me start by answering the question from the woman who's the educator. So there are so many people studying the impact of AI on education. And as you can imagine, the continuum is very, very broad, and there are very, very strong advocates. Right? You know who Sal Khan is? Salman Khan created the Khan Academy, which is a revolution in education 25 years ago. They have launched a product called Conmigo, and they are publishing all of their data today. And probably one of the more serious and rigorous types of study that you're going to see, but that's mostly K-12. It's working. It's not. All right. All right. Hello. Okay. Turn it on. All right. I'm going to do this without a microphone. I don't think so. If they can give it a shot without them, if they can hear me. What's wrong with this mic? All right. Let me just try it out first. Can you hear me in the back of the room? Or do I need a microphone? Please let me know. I'm good? All right. I think we're good. I grew up in New York where you had to talk above the taxes, okay? So I've got a loud voice. All right. So I, as an educator, have brought AI into my classroom beginning in December of 2020. And you recognize that that's because ChatGPT came out in late November of 2022. So I'm certainly very prepared to talk about what I'm doing, what my colleagues are doing within the classroom. But I will say this, if we care about the success of our students and we care about them being employable, then we are doing them a terrible disservice by not allowing them to use ChatGPT or any other of these frontier language models, period. I will tell you that in the labor markets today, we are seeing an incredible level of emphasis on bringing AI fluency into the first job out of university. And if you do not have these skills, let me make it very clear, you are not employable. Okay? We're going to give another one?
Yeah.
I see. Right again. All right. Is that it? See, it's very flaky. It's not very good for you guys.
So, it's on the.
No, I'm going to do this.
Okay.
I hate it, but let me do it. Okay? At least this is consistent. So what I will say is this. There's a lot of people that are concerned that our students are cheating. Our students are cheating when they're using AI. And are they able to cheat? Of course they are. If we do not change teaching methods. So everything I've had to do in the last several years is to go back and think about how I assess my students' ability to accomplish the learning outcomes that we have. And so it takes some work on the part of educators to rethink the way that we teach. and more importantly, to rethink the way that we assess our. It puts more on us as educators, okay? But I will tell you that what I have seen with my students, and I'll talk about all the different institutions where I teach, that my best students use to create outcomes that were previously inconceivable. Not because they cheated, but because it allowed their minds to expand to levels that were inconceivable in the past. So the output, the output of my students, the work product that they deliver, is the most exceptional I've seen in a 21-year teaching. So a lot of it really comes down to, wow, this is wild, huh? Okay, so a lot of it is going to come down to each of us in the room. That's the first thing I want to see. Now let me ask a few questions. Who has seen the documentary, The Thinking Game? The Thinking Game, no one has seen it. 300,000 people have seen this. This is about Demis Hassabis. Does anybody know who Demis Hassabis is? Demis Hassabis is the founder and the CEO of Google DeepMind. And he won a Nobel Prize in chemistry in the last 6 months because DeepMind created something called AlphaFold. How many people have heard of AlphaFold? AlphaFold is a massive contribution to science and medicine because the core of human life are proteins. And they were able to discover very quickly 200 million new proteins that were previously undiscovered. And they were able to do that in a matter of months. So if you care about the future of science and medicine, I will encourage you at your earliest opportunity to go on YouTube and to watch this 90-minute documentary called The Thinking Game. It is completely free of charge, so you don't even have to rent it for $3.99, okay? Now, I want to ask one more question. What country in the world is the most significant adopter of artificial intelligence? I'd love to hear some thoughts. Who's the single biggest adopter in the world of artificial intelligence? Okay, let me hear. How many people said China? A lot. I heard UAE. How many people think UAE? Wait. Any other guesses? Say again? No, okay. So it is the UAE. Microsoft just published a global diffusion study a couple of days ago. 64% of the population of the UAE is currently engaged in using AI. Take a guess at where Saudi's adoption is right now. It's quite low. Embarrassingly low. Okay? It's very low. It's about 10% from what the numbers say, okay? So compare 64%, 10%. So your second question was about 2030 vision strategy and the ability to actually make that into something tangible. So there is a lot of upside for the people in this room to embrace AI in a way that is going to have impact on not just your work, but your country. So now I would like to ask you another question, which is, how many of you truly, honestly believe that you are AI fluent? That you have been using these tools regularly in your work? We can talk about your personal lives either, because a lot of people use them for cooking and things like that, but how many of you have brought these tools into your work? Raise your hands high if you have. How many people today look at AI as something of a novelty that we need to maybe figure out if it's going to be worthwhile? How many people are still waiting for AI to prove whether it is worthy for us? So I've got some work to do, okay? All right, so let me see if this works. Something's going to have to work, right? Yeah, beautiful. All right, let me just share a little bit about my background. I'm an engineer who grew up in Silicon Valley. I worked at McKinsey, and then I started 8 venture capital-backed technology companies. I took 2 public on the NASDAQ, 7 of my 8 companies were acquired by people like IBM and Oracle. Okay? So the very early part of my career was all about entrepreneurship and innovation. After my second IPO, MIT came calling in 1997 and asked if I would like to teach. And when MIT comes and asks you if you'd like to teach, there's really only one answer. And that answer is yes. And I fell in love with teaching. So I've now been an educator for a better part of 23 years or so. I'm currently an executive fellow at Harvard. I've been teaching at Harvard for 6 or 7 years. I teach at Brown University. I teach at Cornell and Columbia and Babson. And I've just begun teaching at NYU in Abu Dhabi. So I'm about to take on a very meaningful role with NYU in Abu Dhabi because there's so much happening in this region around AI adoption. I'll be coming out here about 7 or 8 times a year. Now, the reason I'm in town, I was in the neighborhood. I'm at the Sedaya conference. I'll be on a panel on Thursday, which is all around how we're going to democratize data and AI to empower entrepreneurship in Saudi Arabia. And then on Saturday, I've been asked to give a master class to the president of Sedaya and to his team. So that's what we'll be doing this Saturday. Okay, so that's what brought me to the region. So now that you know a little bit about me, let us, and by the way, I do research as well. So my research is done within the Laboratory of Innovation at Harvard, okay? And so we're doing research in the Entrepreneurship Management Unit. So I've done a lot of stuff. Sid, let me do it. I think it's working, okay? It's working, yeah. I've worked across every imaginable industry, every size of organization, public, nonprofit. But I've also spent a lot of time here in the region. So I've worked Red Sea Global. I've worked NESMA and Partners. I've worked with King Abdullah Financial District, right, and a number of other institutions and a lot of the world's largest sovereign wealth funds here in the region as well. So, and I've also done some lecturing at both PNU, Princess Noor University, and Prince Mohammed bin Salman College of Entrepreneurship and Technology, trying to bring AI into both entrepreneurial studies and into the classroom. All right, so how many people have seen this quote before? Anybody a William Gibson fan? The future is already here. It's just not equally distributed. How many of you think you are living in the future today? You have had the courage to step into the future. So it turns out that, and this was also mentioned as a question on the panel, disruption or profound technology is not new, right? And all of these are challenged, right? Everyone. We started looking at innovation 1780, during the period of the First Industrial Revolution. Okay? And I know this slide might be hard, but let me try to just quickly describe it to you. Right? Every one of the 6 waves of innovation, and right now, by the way, we are in the 6th wave of innovation. Okay? Every one was catalyzed by some profound invention or innovation. And each one of those created a dramatic change in society, in the economy, in the labor market, okay? And what happens when you go from one wave to the next is a lot of people take a very conservative point of view and they stick with what's worked for them in the past. They hold on to the past. They are what I call enemies of the future. Nobody wants to be an enemy of the future because that has a losing strategy for 300 years, okay? And so what we see now is that there are lessons throughout history that we can bring to bear. So as we live through this revolution, as we live through this new wave, we have a lot of history we can draw upon, but the challenge is nothing has ever moved this quickly before, okay? AI capabilities are doubling every 3 to 4 months. Now, that's an easy thing to say, but it's an almost impossible thing to fully understand. So I was working with my friends at Cactus in Washington, D.C. I was there in November, and I just reflect back on what I saw in November versus the capabilities that are available to me today. In less than 90 days, it is beyond profound. And so whether you know it or not, November 22nd or so of 2022 was only a little over 3 years ago, but we have already been through 3 mini eras in that time frame. Okay? We have gone from a very simple chatbot where we ask it some questions and it gives us answers, sometimes right or sometimes wrong, to something profoundly different than that. We've moved into an era where there's an ability to automate workflows, tasks, business processes that can now be automated for 5, 7 hours at a time. We've gone to a point, anybody in the room a computer scientist or researching in computer science? We've now got into a place where software writes itself. The best programmers in the world are saying they no longer have to write software. They just program in English or Arabic or whatever language is your choice, and complex software, not little mini applications in the App Store. Very complex software is writing itself, okay? So I cannot emphasize enough that this new wave, it's not something that's going to go away. It's not something that, assume, well, maybe it may last. We're so deep into it that if we don't embrace it fully, and we heard this from the panelists, there's no way you're going to be great at what you do. This is absolutely essential to your future relevance. Okay, so let me tell you a little story. Anybody around 66 million years ago? No? All right, so let me tell you what happened. A meteor the size of Manhattan hit the Earth. And we had these 2 species. We had the octopus, very beautifully colored orange-red, and we had its cousin. And its cousin was all about stability. Its cousin it had this very rigid body and meant to last only in very stable conditions. But what happens when a meteor the size of Manhattan hits the Earth? Well, acid rain falls from the sky. Temperatures in the ocean dramatically increase, destroying the food web. And as a result of that, the species on the right instantly became extinct. And you can find fossils on beaches around the world. The octopus is still with us 66 million years later. That's a remarkable thing. What makes the octopus so adaptive? The octopus has 9 brains. It has a brain in each of its legs, as well as one in its head. And all of these brains are connected together by what is called a neural necklace. So the octopus is an extremely adaptive species that has the ability to have 8 arms in 8 different directions, constantly sensing what's happening. And it has a unique type of RNA that allows it to very dramatically change itself, depending on water temperature, water acidity, etc., right? And so I think there's an analogy for us as people, or for the organizations that represent, to become more like the octopus, right? Remember the great Darwin quote. It's not the strongest or the smartest that survive. It's the most adaptive. And that's exactly what the octopus has proven. Highly adaptive. We need to model that today. And so there was another meteor that hit the Earth a little bit more recently, and I think just looking around, you were all here for that one, okay? And that, of course, was ChatGPT 3.5. Now, it's not that AI is new. Some of you know that AI goes back to 1950, right? And Turing test was named back in the 1950s. It just took 70 years to get to where we need to go. The bottom line is what makes this phenomena it is that all of the complexity is below the surface of the water. So think of an iceberg, right? All we see is the interface. all we need to do is either be able to speak in our natural language or type. So I was at Nesma and Partners, and I imagine most of you know Nesma, the largest commercial construction company here in the kingdom. They're building the new airport terminal in Riyadh. They work very, very closely with Aramco. And so there was an older gentleman in the room, and he raised his hand. I had been invited in by the CIO and 50 of his leaders to lead a 2-day workshop in Dammam. And he raised his hand and said, I'm afraid I'm not technical enough to be in this room. And I said, well, I can tell you that I already know that you are. 1, because you were able to speak to me. And 2, because you have a laptop in front of you, which means that you know how to type. And so you no longer have to be a data scientist, a machine learning engineer, a computer scientist. If you can speak and or type, you are more than technical to take advantage of these tools. Why this became the phenomena that it is. It has democratized access to a set of tools, capabilities, that are the most powerful that we've ever had access to. And oh, by the way, a lot of these tools are either free or ridiculously inexpensive. Why? Because everyone is trying to gain market share right now. And so the thought that you can get ChatGPT subscription for $20 a month, and it saves you 20 hours a week, if you just put a value on your time, it is an arbitrage opportunity. You are getting so much value out of these tools. It's insane. I am more productive today than I've ever been in my entire life. So the woman that was on the panel saying we're lucky to be alive now, I could not agree more having these tools, okay? There we go. All right. So if you think that waiting is a good strategy, patience is not a virtue here. Highly impatient approach is all that matters, okay? So now, I don't normally quote Marx and Lenin. It's not my thing. I'm a bit of a capitalist. But I would say that Vladimir Lenin got it right. It just may be in the wrong. And what he says are there are decades when nothing happens, and there are weeks when decades happen. And that's exactly what we're seeing. So what we're starting to see is all of these frontier models have moved into the PhD level of intelligence. You're no longer dealing with a smart intern. That was going back 2 years ago. Now you are basically asking PhD levels, or you're getting PhD level responses to your prompts, if you learn how to prompt properly. Because we've moved to these reasoning models now. So it's no longer this quick response. It's a much more measured response. And sometimes I go and think for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes before it comes back with an answer. I am awestruck daily by the output that I am getting. Even if I'm creating a syllabus, if I'm creating a teaching plan, if I'm doing anything that has to do with a keynote speech or moderating a panel, the level of output is just incredible. So this is now more than a year old. So let me ask you, how many people have used deep research from Google? Raise your hands high, okay? And of course, it's not just, I'm not from Google, from OpenAI, but you now have deep research from Gemini. You have it from Anthropic. You have it from Grok. You have it from DeepSeek. Okay? How many people have found this to change the way that you work? That it's given you a level of productivity you never thought was possible before? I don't see enough hands in the room, okay? So if you're not using these tools, you're missing something so profoundly powerful. And yes, I would advise you to get a subscription, but you can still use these for free. It will be limited. You'll only get a small number, maybe 5 a month. But if you prove to yourself the value, I can't imagine a better way to start. So we're talking about research, and what you may not know is Google Gemini is now renting out AI agents as scientists. Team of researchers now hire a team of AI agents, and you can complete an entire lab Okay, and this is not science fiction. This is not the future. This is being done and has been done the last 2 years. Okay? Well, I know that we heard from the panel that a lot of people like to play video games. Anybody like to code for fun? Weekend projects where you like? One guy in the room. So we have what is considered the world's most influential collegiate university level computer science challenge. It's called the International Collegiate Programming Contest. They invite universities from around the world each year to compete. They invite 3,000 universities. I'm sure King Saud University must be, an annual participant. All of the great engineering schools around the world. And this year, for the first time, the team that won was not human. The team that won was a group of AI agents that were created by OpenAI, the people that bring you ChatGPT. They give 12 different problems to science students, and they take about 6 hours to solve these problems. It's a very challenge. This year, OpenAI solved all 12 problems perfectly. All the decades that this competition has been held in the past, no team has ever answered all of the questions perfectly, okay? 12 out of 12. Now, what's amazing is they sent, right, and Russians are world-class coders, the University of St. Petersburg, an incredible computer science school, did not win. Shanghai, Harvard, MIT, Tokyo, Beijing, did not win. So now we've got the ability for agents to write code better than the smartest university computer science majors in the world. And then how many mathematicians do we have in the room? Okay? 2 years ago, people were saying, you know what, this is never going to be very good at math. Never when it comes to AI, because both OpenAI and Gemini won the gold medal at the international. This is the Olympics for math geeks, okay? So if you're a math geek, I've got to believe this is something that is going to completely rock your world. So let me stop here. Are there any questions about what I've shared with you so far? Is my case starting to make some value to this? Okay? So the clock speed matters. And as we said before, the UAE has 64% of its citizens using AI. Saudi has 10%. What happens is that as AI abilities continue to accelerate, the gap between the frontier, the early adopters, those that are hesitating to adopt, is getting greater and more challenging to catch up. Okay? So there's the clock speed of the industry, which is the clock speed of creating these tools, and there's nothing that's going to slow them down. And then there's the clock speed of individuals in our agency, or there's the clock speed of the organizations that we work for. Now, academic organizations are not necessarily known to be agile, are they? Academic institutions move at their own speed, okay? So the challenge is that we are working in industries, in sectors, where there's already a high level of inertia and resistance. Now, I will say there are institutions in the US that have 45, 50,000 ChatGPT licenses or Gemini license, right? There's a group of institutions understood it was their responsibility to make these available to students and made the investment early, and they're doing it, okay? And their graduates are getting hired, okay? But that's not common. And so there's the classic S-curve, and what the S-curve basically says is there comes a point where the advancement no longer is going straight up. It starts to lose its momentum. If you know what Moore's law is, right? Moore's law was what governed the improvement of semiconductors in the 1960s. It had a heck of a run. But 60 years in, Moore's Law is finally starting to hit an asymptote. We're not seeing any level of that with AI. This is exponential squared. This is going straight up, and it's actually accelerating because AI is now teaching itself. And so the capabilities are actually not declining, they're accelerating every 3 months, okay? And that's hard to wrap your head around, quite frankly. And so we need to be aware of the gap between what is happening in the world outside of the four doors of our institution and what is happening in our organization or within our own home, our own youth today. And so I'm on the board of directors of a company in London, England, and they own companies. And when you ask them what their moat is, it's physics. They're in the world of physical and virtual test of aircraft and automobiles and trucks. So when you ask them, what is the unique expertise you have that's allowed you to be around the last 100 years, they say it's. What did I say earlier that would challenge that statement? Now PhD level physics smarts. So their business to depend on for the last 100 years is about to evaporate. And so what that means is they need to completely reimagine what they do to bring value to the marketplace. It's not an easy thing for any company to do, much less a 100 company that's been in the market in relatively conservative industries. Academic institutions' moats are obviously being disrupted. What we see, what we grew up with in this room, and where education will be 5 years from now, we won't recognize it. So let's be very clear. Our industry is under attack. And it's our role as educators, researchers, to redefine what our institutions need to be in this new era with co-intelligence. Okay, that's just another view of it, so I'm not going to go there. Right now, what's happening here, that smart money, that these traditional industries don't move quickly. They are conservative, they are reticent. And so what we're seeing is that we're seeing tens of billions of dollars pools of capital being brought into traditional industry in order to disrupt. Has anybody ever heard of Open Evidence? Open Evidence is an organization that is based in Massachusetts, and they are creating a juggernaut that will dramatically disrupt medical publishing. They have raised about $700 million in venture capital. They have a $12 billion valuation. And what they have been able to do is they have entered licensing deals with about 300,000 medical journals, including some of the most prestigious in the world, like the Journal of American Medicine and the New England Journal of Medicine. And what they're doing is they're bypassing, and they are providing an abstraction lever over all different medical and scientific journals. And now, so they're going to really create significant in the world of medical publishing, okay? If you've not logged on to Open Evidence, I would recommend that you see what it is, because they are the future. They are the future of publishing, okay? What's that? It's not available for practitioners here, but I want you to see what's coming your way, okay? Because I promise you it's coming, okay? I would call it Exhibit A of the publishing industry. If the publishing industry does not embrace, yes, okay? And so Thomas von Cook, who manages one of the world's largest private equity funds, says, even in established industries, you're going to see a lot of tipping points where old behavior changes really quickly. And if you're on the wrong side of that, it's going to get ugly very fast, okay? And so I don't know how many of you studied Latin, but ictu oculi is in the blink of an eye. And think of how many people have their BlackBerry phone. Anybody have their BlackBerry with? This is the perfect poster child for what happens when you ignore disruption. 1 year, 97% market share, and 2 years later, you have 3%. We have a technology-challenged AV room here, okay? Here we go. All right. So for the women in the room, I bring you the great Madame Marie Curie, and I love this phrase, nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood. That's why I'm here, okay? Now is the time to understand more so we may fear less, okay? Fear doesn't help. We need to understand how these tools work. Every one of us in the room. And so I want to now share with you the art of the possible, okay? The first thing is to share a quote with a colleague of mine from Boston who's a futurist named Alvin Toffler. The elite of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write. It will be those that cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So I have, as I mentioned in the opening remarks, I have had to unlearn a lot about how I teach. I don't give my Harvard Business School students 25-page Harvard School case studies and ask them to come with their profound insights, because ChatGPT is going to do that for them. Charade if I did that. And so what I do instead is I create my own mini case studies, and I don't give them to them the night before. I give that to them when they walk into the classroom, so that they must think about this with a fresh set of eyes, with their own critical thinking, okay? I have gone back to using blue books. I confess, using blue books. Now, that may seem retro, but let me tell you, when you fill up a lecture hall with a group of students and you take away their iPhones, their iPads, their Apple Watches, and any device that they can use, and you give them a blue book, and you ask them to think about the learning outcomes and how they can describe them, there is a level of critical thinking going on in that room that I haven't seen in a very long time. There is smoke coming out of the okay? It is amazing what when we use these blue books. Okay, please.
ChatGPT in your many cases that you prepare for your students?
Do I use tools? Do I use the tools to create cases? Again, I use tools to help me create the cases, okay? But at the end of the day, human in the loop, it's very productive, but at the end of the day, it doesn't have the 30 years of experience that I do. But I cannot imagine not using it, okay? Yep, and I would never lie about that. It's just an incredibly powerful productivity tool for me, okay? So I also have had to unlearn everything I learned about being an entrepreneur, because it used to be, you know, you would need to hire 10, 15 people. You can build a $100 million company in 8 months with 2 people, okay? Again, it's not fiction. We're seeing it happen every day. So everything that I've learned in my career, I've had to unlearn. Now, if you are a leader in the room, if you're a leader in a department or leading, you know, some institution, this one's for you. And what I see as I travel the world doing this educational stuff around AI is that the majority of people working in organizations as if their leaders have embraced AI. The tools, maybe, they're not investing in training. They're not providing strategy. They're not providing the rules of behavior and engagement. And so a lot of employees just don't know what to do. Or they're afraid to admit that they're using AI because a friend said tonight, you know, there was a stigma about using, or I'm a gamer, there's a stigma about gaming. Well, companies, there's a stigma about, oh my God, they're not serious or they're a leader, whatever. And you need your leadership to lead, to create governance policies, to let you know what acceptable use is, to let you know what tools you should use and not, to let you know what data you should know to look at and feed into these systems, okay? And what happens, not surprisingly, is that when leaders lead, there's a dramatic improvement. There's a 41% people within the organization are regular users of AI, and they're sharing. You can imagine how important that is to the organization. There's a 40% improvement that people see AI having a positive. So attitude matters greatly. And then the last one is there's a 47% increase in people feeling that AI has a positive effect on their job. And them guess, you know, am I going to? They're saying we don't intend to lay everyone off. What we intend to do is intend to give people the ability to learn these tools because we can expand our businesses. We want to transform the way that we do business. We bring new to this organization. We're going to need you to do it. Imagine the difference between that and pure silence. And how, because people are going to assume the worst, okay? So I know that there was that wonderful exercise at the end. Who should be making these decisions? Yes, you want to hear from everybody, but leaders have to own them. And what we're seeing in the data is from last year, the CIO owned these strategies. It's too strategic for the CIO. Now the CEO taking full responsibility for AI strategy. It's just demonstrating how critically important it is, okay? So it's no longer, that's what my tech people do. No, this is my company. This is the future of my company. I need to own the strategy, period. Okay, so let's talk about academic publishers. How many of you are academic publishers? Anybody working as a publisher? No? Yeah, okay. What's that? Yes, okay. So, what we don't want to do is be like the people that are too busy to embrace innovation, okay? That doesn't work really well. Now, does anybody remember this Larry David Super Bowl commercial? I'm wondering if we're going to be able to, okay, yeah, we can't play it here. That's too bad. All right. So this was a Super Bowl commercial 2 years ago. And this one character appears throughout history. And every time he's presented with an innovation, his first reaction is, that's not interesting. And he does it from the wheel. He does it with the lecture. Pretty much every profound innovation. Okay. At many institutions in the academic world, the research world, are status quo organizations. It's just the nature of what they are, right? Keep things exactly what they are, right? But we have a choice. Every one of us has an agency, okay? And if you feel that your organizations are limiting you because you know if you're not willing to change, you need to find organizations with cultures and leadership that give you the agency that you deserve to build your careers, okay? So here's a very book by an author from the Dartmouth Tuck School of Business called Epic Disruptions. And this was the you earlier, right? The 6 ways of innovation. The disruption repeatedly rewrite the rules of human possibility. The author to define 10 innovations in modern history. And you'll see that number 2 is the printing press, okay? I mean, the printing press was an extraordinary innovation, democratizing access to information, okay? Just the way that your other tools are today. And so, of course, the Apple iPhone is a hard one to miss, okay? And so the history of publishing, right? You cannot separate modernity from publishing. In the West, it was Protestant Reformation, okay? And if there wasn't the Protestant Reformation with the dissemination of knowledge, there would never have been the Renaissance. there would never have been the Enlightenment, okay? So this is what happened. Think of the iPhone. How dumb your phone was until Steve Jobs hid most of the complexity surface of. So even when you go to a wedding reception, knows how to use an iPad to watch a movie. When I was growing up, you needed a user's manual to use these computers. The 12-year-old kid doesn't need a user's manual. They just know how to swipe, okay? So this is a recurring theme. And having some interesting times in America. My God, insane. But one of our founding fathers was Benjamin Franklin. And Benjamin Franklin was a publisher. That was the role he was engaged in, and literally were the catalyst for the U.S. Revolution, okay? Let's be clear, publishing is a critically important function in society and in our lives today, okay? And so amongst those 600 years, we've seen all of these different levers that have been pushed. Okay, I'm going to move up to the front here, okay? And I'm sure, not all of these acronyms mean something to you. All of the levers of publishing have continued to evolve and be innovative, right? The creation lever, typesetting, Gen AI drafting, which is where we are today. Production, offset, XML first, agentic pipelines, distribution from a rotary press to web platforms to repositories. To printing on demand, discovery, indexes, search engines, knowledge graphs, AI assistants, verification in memory, peer review, integrity, right? So all of these things have been evolving over the last 600 years, okay? But at the end of the day, it's integrity that sets us apart right now, right? So we've always had trust challenges. We had trust challenges with plagiarism when we went to photocopies. We know about link rot on the web. We now know we've got paper mills that are happening and AI-generated text, right? And the industry has always been able to step up and answer each new technology with new norms, right? There's always been innovation within this industry, okay? So we've gone from XML first to AI ready, right? The important thing is the role of we humans has become more strategic, not less strategic, okay? Human in the loop is not new. Okay, so this just minimizes the tedious rote work that none of us want to do anyway, right? That's why they call it work, okay? All right, so let me keep moving here, okay? So I think we are entering a new era for scholarly publishing, right? And the question we have to ask ourselves and our institutions is, are we ready to embrace it? Have we realized that in an era where we believe that we're going to need 40 million reviewers in a couple of years, right? Back in America, there was a time when we had the old telephone operator where you had a switchboard operator that would take a wire and they would connect one phone to another phone. And AT&T did the math and they said every woman in America is going to have to be a telephone operator, a switchboard operator, right? Which was an insanely naive calculation because they didn't take into account innovation. But the message was, if we do things the same way we've always done them, we're going to need 80 million women to be switchboard operators. Well, thank God they figured out what a PBX exchange was, okay? And basically, we're playing the same game here, which is if we don't embrace AI, we're going to need more and more humans to review, and we're going to run out of human reviewers. And then what do we do? Okay? So I think the answer is pretty obvious, pretty evident. Okay? So we're seeing, massive explosions of research output, data complexity, workflows are under intense strain, peer review delays, editorial overload, integrity threats. And so the message is very simple, right? How many people believe that AI can be an important part of a solution to publishing? Raise your hands if you believe that. And if you don't have your hands up, why not? That's the question, okay? How are we doing on time? We got to go. 5 minutes, okay, so let me move through this quickly, okay? So we know, I don't think I have to tell you the problems that we face. You live them every day, okay? I'm preaching to the choir. volume and velocity, exponential growth in submissions, paper mills, plagiarism, manipulated images, and it's just going to get worse, okay? Operational friction, manual screening, slow reviews, accessibility gaps, locked behind format barriers and languages, and how do we scale? And we have to scale because the industry demands it. Quality, trust, and efficiency, okay? And so I think AI is that answer, right? And this is a cover from The Economist from going back about a year, okay? Let me just share with you one academic study that was done by Harvard Business School in Wharton. What they did is they went to 700 professionals at Procter & Gamble, and they created a set of tasks. And there was the control group, and then there was the active group. And what they basically did is they said, okay, the control group, you have 2 people, you're going to get a task, no AI. And then the active group, 1 person with AI. And they asked them to compete under time conditions. You can guess what the output was, okay? 1 person with AI was more than someone with AI. More importantly, the objective quality of the output was 3 times higher, okay? Because they're able to consider a lot more variables. The second thing that they were able to do was they were able to dissolve or break down functional silos, because if I've got a PhD sitting in my ChatGPT, I can ask my PhD in chemistry or microbiology or you name the scientific domain, and I'm going to get that brought back to me in real time. But what's really interesting is, again, this is where the moat goes away. Novices with AI can outperform PhDs in their own field, okay? Now, I go and give grand rounds to doctors in teaching hospitals. It's unnerving when you see that you can get a better differential diagnosis from a finely tuned medical chatbot than you can from someone who's a world-class physician. But we have to acknowledge reality, period, okay? And I'm going to wind this down, okay? So let me just try to cut to the chase, okay? One of the courses I teach at Harvard Business School right now is all about finding really important problems to solve. I happen to have the privilege of meeting Sid back when he was working at his prior company. And when he moved to Cactus and they described the problem that they're solving, my message was, I can imagine a problem to solve. Cactus has been at this for a long time, okay? And when you look at who their clients are, if you look at the impact that they've had, and I'm going to leave it up to the Cactus team to describe the benefits that they bring to their clients. But this is the future, right? They had the vision, they coming into the field, they very strategic acquisition, and I think they're very much on the frontier of, right? And that's why I'm here tonight, because I believe in what they're doing, okay? So, responsible AI in publishing, transparency, always disclose AI use. God forbid people try to hide it, okay? In both review, human in the loop always. Refer to a bias mitigation, diverse data evaluation, right? All kinds of recommendations on reviewers that go outside of sort of our normal population, and collaboration, right, with detection tools as well, okay? Let me just leave you with this, right? This is my friend Steve Jobs. Innovation is the ability to see change. Right? And I will tell you that when I give, and I teach a group of gifted high school students at Harvard every summer, and they're not allowed to their classroom in their high schools. Come into my classroom and they know they're going to work with AI tools. It's like they could not be many more excited, right? They understand the importance of having these skills, right? They see this as an opportunity instantly, innately. To them, this is like the most incredible gift you could give them. Yeah, please. How can I use they're using it correctly?
How can you ensure that the students are using it the correct way? Because as educators, we are concerned about using AI by students.
Well, I'm going to to what I said earlier, all right? I have to change the way I assess them, right? But most importantly, I have to train them on how to use it. I have to train them on how to prompt. I have to train them on understanding that the first answer is just the first answer. That they're gonna, it goes back to the question my friend over here asked me, am I using ChatGPT to help me write these cases? Yes, it's helping me. But at the end of the day, they are writing the final output. They're showing me the difference between what the chatbot offered them and how their brain then enhanced that. Oh, and then discussion. Yeah, so they don't just get to submit something that comes out of a piece of paper. I mean, we're challenging their thinking all the time, okay? And I know we're out of time, so let me leave you with this, okay? I want you all to imagine, now that you've had a chance to hear what I've shared with you, that next Monday, you make a commitment to yourself to pick 1 or 2 tools that you feel will make you more productive and begin to learn how to use these tools so that you can then teach others in your departments or in your work groups and your children how to use them, okay? I can't emphasize enough the importance of your own relevance and enthusiasm to make that commitment, because you're not going to learn this. Learn it by laying hands on the tools, practicing, okay? So with that said, I hope I lit a little bit of a fire under you tonight, and that's all I've got. Yeah.